Hey there.
Mm.
Ever wonder how immigration really shapes our economy?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
You're not alone. We're diving into that today
Okay.
with this blog post we found. It's called
Uh-huh.
How Immigrants Fuel Economies and Drive Generational Success.
Okay.
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Get this. Immigrants often play a huge role in fields
Mm-hmm.
like medicine and STEM,
Yeah.
but their path to success
Right.
isn't always instant riches.
No, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme or anything.
In fact, building generational wealth
Yeah.
often takes a couple of generations.
That's right. The blog post really digs into that idea. It's a journey, not an overnight thing.
Right.
It also dives into how immigrants often take on the essential jobs.
Okay.
The ones that keep things running.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I'm seeing stats here about a big chunk of immigrants working in service jobs, construction, even production and transportation, way more than people born here.
Exactly. And it's not just a U.S. thing either.
Oh, really?
The Post uses Luxembourg as an example. They actually have labor shortages.
Wow.
So immigrants are vital in healthcare, construction, education, you name it.
So are they like...
What's fascinating is how this pattern actually helps those countries stay competitive because they can meet the demand for workers.
So it's almost like they're filling these crucial gaps that keep the whole system going.
Yeah, you could say that.
But what about the idea of immigrants and their kids moving up the ladder?
Yeah.
That whole American dream concept.
Well, that's where this idea of generational mobility comes in. Think of it like building a house. It takes time, right?
Right.
First the foundation, then the walls, and finally the roof.
Uh-huh.
It's the same with economic success for immigrant families.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
But how does that actually play out?
Sure.
I mean, do immigrant families actually end up doing better than families who have been here longer?
The Post says it usually takes 2 or 3 generations for immigrant families to outpace native-born families economically.
Wow.
But in the U.S., the cool thing is that children of immigrants often end up earning more than their native-born peers within just 2 generations.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
It really shows that drive to succeed.
Definitely.
Speaking of success, let's talk about this impressive stats about immigrants
Sure.
in fields like medicine and STEM that really stood out to me
Yeah.
in the blog post.
It's definitely eye-opening. Medicine especially is known for job security and high salaries.
Right.
And get this, almost 27% of physicians and surgeons in the U.S.
Wow.
are foreign-born.
That's a lot.
Compare that to their 14% representation in the general workforce. It's a big jump.
Wow, that is a big difference. It makes you wonder why medicine in particular seems to attract so many immigrants.
Well, the Post points out that many foreign-born doctors specialize in high-earning areas.
Like what?
Like cardiology and surgery. We're talking incomes over $208,000 annually.
That's a pretty good reason right there.
It is.
And I bet that kind of financial stability has a huge impact on their kids, too.
Absolutely. The Post even mentions that children of immigrant doctors are 3 times more likely to attend Ivy League schools. It really highlights how that financial success can translate into opportunities for the next generation.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
Opening doors for their kids that they might not have had otherwise. It's really inspiring to see how hard work and dedication can create that kind of ripple effect.
It really is. But, the blog post isn't just about highlighting immigrant success stories.
Right.
It also lays out a roadmap for financial security that anyone can follow, regardless of where they come from.
That's a great point. So what are some of the key steps they highlight?
Well, first and foremost, they emphasize pursuing high-demand fields.
Okay.
Just like we were talking about with medicine and STEM.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are the areas where the jobs are and where you have the potential to earn a good income.
Right.
But what about managing that income once you have it?
That's where financial literacy comes in. The Post really stresses the importance of understanding things like investing and budgeting.
Right, because it's not just about earning money. It's about knowing how to make that money work for you.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the classic advice, live below your means.
Always a good reminder. It's easy to get caught up in lifestyle inflation.
Yeah.
But focusing on saving and investing can make a huge difference in the long run.
Yeah.
So we've got choosing the right career, being smart with our money, anything else.
The final piece of the puzzle, according to the blog post, is educating the next generation, giving our kids the tools and knowledge they need to succeed in these high opportunity areas.
It's all about setting them up for success, right? Making sure they have the knowledge and skills to thrive in a competitive world.
Precisely. Now, before we move on, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something.
Okay.
We've been talking about medicine and STEM.
Right.
But what are some other high-demand fields that you think could lead to similar success stories?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think we need to take a closer look at that. What do you think? Are there any other fields that jump out at you?
Well, there are definitely a few that come to mind.
Okay.
But let's save that for our next segment. I think it deserves a deeper dive.
I agree. I'm already intrigued. So for all of you listening, stay tuned because we're going to be exploring even more paths to success inspired by these amazing immigrant journeys.
Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, as we were discussing those amazing success stories of immigrants, particularly in medicine, it really got me thinking about how their financial success often translates into opportunities for their children.
You're so right. We were just talking about how kids of immigrant doctors are way more likely to go to Ivy League schools. Okay. That's huge.
It is.
It seems like that financial stability can really set up future generations for success.
It's a classic example of generational mobility.
Right.
And the blog post we're exploring really emphasizes how it typically takes a couple of generations for immigrant families to economically surpass those who've been here longer.
Right.
It's like building a strong foundation. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right. It's like planting a tree. It takes time for the roots to grow deep and for the tree to reach its full potential.
Exactly.
But it's encouraging to see that in the U.S., at least, children of immigrants are already out-earning their native-born peers within just 2 generations.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about their ambition and the opportunities they create for their kids. But, you know, this whole conversation about economic success brings up a tricky question that we can't ignore: the debate around wages and immigration's impact on the job market.
It's definitely a hot topic, and I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah.
The blog post acknowledges that immigrants often fill lower-paying roles, and we saw the data showing that wage gap between foreign-born and native-born workers.
Yes, and it's important to recognize that the gap can be even wider.
Really?
In certain sectors, like service industries.
Okay.
There are various factors at play, things like language barriers, differences in educational credentials, and even the types of jobs that immigrants are more likely to hold.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is.
There's so many different pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah.
But doesn't the blog post also argue that immigrant workers actually help stabilize costs in those industries? How does that work?
That's right. It's about looking at the bigger picture.
Okay.
While some argue that immigration can lead to lower wages for certain native-born workers, others believe it stimulates economic growth, creating more jobs and increasing demand for goods and services. It's a multifaceted issue with no easy answers.
It sounds like we need to go beyond those simple arguments and really dive into the nuances of how immigration impacts different industries and regions.
Exactly.
But let's shift gears a bit.
Sure.
And go back to that inspiring example of immigrants in medicine.
Okay.
I think there's a lot we can unpack there.
It's a fascinating example.
Yeah.
As the blog post highlights, medicine is a field where immigrants often achieve rapid success, both financially and socially.
Okay.
And it makes sense. It's a career with incredible job security, high earning potential, and that undeniable prestige.
Plus, those stats about foreign-born doctors in the U.S. were mind-blowing.
They were.
Almost 27% of physicians and surgeons are foreign-born.
It's a lot.
That's way more than their representation in the general population.
It really is. And what I find intriguing is that many of them gravitate towards high-paying specialties.
Like what?
Like cardiology and surgery, which, as we mentioned earlier, can mean incomes exceeding $208,000 a year.
It's incredible to think about the dedication and talent it takes to reach that level of expertise.
It is.
And as we discussed before, that financial stability has a ripple effect on their kids, opening up opportunities, like attending top-tier universities.
It's a beautiful illustration of how hard work and sacrifice can pave the way for future generations to achieve even greater things.
Exactly.
It's the essence of the American dream, realized through the journeys of countless immigrants.
It's truly inspiring. But It's important to acknowledge that this path isn't always easy.
Right.
Immigrants often face challenges,
They do.
language barriers, cultural differences, and sometimes even discrimination.
You're absolutely right. Their journey often comes with obstacles.
Yeah.
And we can't overlook that.
Of course not.
The blog post, however, doesn't just focus on the success stories.
Right.
It actually lays out a framework for achieving financial security and generational wealth that anyone can apply, regardless of their background.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
So what are some of those key principles that anyone can benefit from?
Well, remember how we talked about the importance of choosing a high-demand field?
Right. It's all about aligning your skills and interests with what the job market needs.
Exactly.
Makes perfect sense. What comes next?
Next, the post emphasizes the crucial role of financial literacy.
Okay.
Being savvy about managing money,
Right.
making wise investments, and planning for the future.
That's so important and something we could all benefit from brushing up on.
I agree.
Because earning money is one thing,
Uh-huh.
but knowing how to make it work for you long-term is key.
Exactly. Then there's that age-old wisdom, live below your means.
Always a good one.
It's about making conscious choices, about spending, resisting the urge to overspend, and prioritizing saving and investing.
It's a timeless piece of advice, but it's sometimes easier said than done.
Is.
Especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages to buy more, spend more, have more.
It's true.
Yeah.
But the blog post reminds us that true wealth isn't about keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
It's about building a secure future for yourself and your loved ones. And finally, remember how we discussed the importance of education for the next generation?
Right.
That's the last key principle highlighted in the post.
It's about equipping our kids with the knowledge, skills, and values they need to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Exactly.
Whether they follow in our footsteps or forge their own path, we want them to be prepared.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the idea of exploring other high-demand fields that might hold similar potential for success, even beyond medicine and STEM. Oh, yes. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that. What are some other areas that come to mind?
Well, there are definitely a few that stand out.
Okay.
But I think we should save that discussion for our final segment.
Okay.
It deserves its own spotlight.
I can't wait. And for our listeners, be sure to stick around for the final part of our deep dive. We'll be revealing some exciting insights into other high-demand fields that could lead to incredible success stories, just like we've seen with immigrants in medicine and STEM.
Welcome back. As we've been exploring this whole idea of immigrants fueling economies and building generational wealth, it really makes you appreciate the diverse talents and perspectives they bring to the table.
It's true. We've seen how they often step into essential roles, driving innovation in fields like medicine and STEM. And in our last segment, we were teasing the idea of uncovering some other high-demand fields that could hold similar potential for success.
I'm ready to dive into that.
Okay.
What other areas are you thinking about?
Well, one area that immediately comes to mind is the technology sector.
Okay.
But with a twist. Think about it. We often hear about immigrants excelling in software engineering and computer science.
Right.
But what about the booming field of cybersecurity?
Oh, that's interesting. I can see why that would be a high-demand field.
Yeah.
With all the data breaches and online threats these days, companies are desperate for experts who can protect their systems and information.
Exactly. And the skills required in cybersecurity often align well with the analytical and problem-solving abilities that many immigrants possess.
Right.
Plus, it's a field with a lot of room for growth and specialization, meaning there's potential for high earning power and career advancement.
That makes a lot of sense. So for someone listening who might be considering a career change or looking for a field with a lot of opportunity, cybersecurity could be a great path to explore. What other areas are you thinking about?
Another field that's often overlooked but has huge potential is renewable energy.
Oh, okay.
As the world shifts towards more sustainable practices, the demand for skilled professionals in solar, wind, and geothermal energy is skyrocketing.
That's a great point. And it's not just about installing solar panels.
No.
It's about designing and implementing complex systems, managing energy grids, and developing new technologies.
Exactly. And think about the global impact. Renewable energy is a key part of combating climate change. So it's a field that offers not just financial rewards, but also the chance to contribute to a more sustainable future.
It's like a win-win.
Yeah.
You can build a successful career while making a positive difference in the world. I'm sensing a theme here. These are all fields that are not only in high demand, but also solve critical problems and address global challenges.
You're picking up on something crucial here. When choosing a career path, it's important to consider not just your personal interests, but also the larger societal needs and trends.
Right. It's about aligning your skills and passions with opportunities that are both personally rewarding and contribute to the greater good. Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we discussed earlier, the idea of how we can better support and empower immigrants to reach their full potential.
That's a question that deserves ongoing attention.
I agree.
You know, we've talked about the importance of creating welcoming and inclusive communities, but it goes beyond that.
What else can we do to level the playing field and create more opportunities for immigrants to succeed?
One area where we can make a real difference is in providing access to language programs and job training initiatives.
That's so important. Many immigrants arrive with valuable skills and experience.
They do.
But language barriers can often hold them back. And targeted job training programs can help them adapt their skills to the specific demands of the U.S. job market.
Exactly. We also need to address the issue of credential recognition.
You
know, many immigrants come to the U.S. with degrees and certifications from their home countries, but those qualifications aren't always recognized here.
That must be incredibly frustrating. Imagine having the education and experience to excel in a particular field, but being blocked by bureaucratic hurdles.
It's a huge barrier for many immigrants, and it's a waste of talent and potential.
I agree.
We need to streamline the process and make it easier for immigrants to have their credentials evaluated fairly so they can contribute their skills to our economy.
I couldn't agree more. And let's not forget about the importance of mentorship. Connecting immigrants with established professionals in their fields can provide invaluable guidance, support, and networking opportunities.
Mentorship can be incredibly powerful. It's about sharing knowledge, building relationships, and helping immigrants navigate the often complex world of career advancement.
It's about fostering a sense of community and creating a support system that can help immigrants thrive. You know, throughout this deep dive, we've explored so many facets of immigration. From the economic impact to the inspiring success stories to the challenges they often face. And it's clear that immigrants are an integral part of our society, enriching our communities and driving innovation.
Absolutely. And I think the most important takeaway is that we all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and welcoming society where everyone, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to succeed.
Beautifully said. So, to our listeners, let's keep this conversation going. Let's challenge our own assumptions, let's celebrate the contributions of immigrants, and let's work together to build a future where everyone has the chance to reach their full potential. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.